it takes less time to make a decision here than in a larger organization where you'd have to stakeholder and it'll take months or even years to get things across. Here, things can happen in a few weeks and we execute it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Aaisha Knights, who's a Chief People Officer at LMAX Group. During the episode, Aaisha talks about what HR leaders can expect when moving from a large corporation to a mid-sized scale-up and how HR responsibilities and priorities differ when transitioning. She also shares the challenges that HR leaders may face when adapting to a fast-paced environment of a mid-sized scale-up, and also how HR leaders can balance the need for structure and processes with agility and innovation that's often associated with scale-ups. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Aaisha, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you. No, I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. Really looking forward to the conversation.
I feel like I'm really intimidated by your setup right now in the boardroom as well. I can't believe it's been like so long since we spoke, and it's been, what did you say before? Like over a year, right? Since you've been in the new role.
Over a year, yeah. So I've been in this role since December of 21. So coming up to a year and a half now, which it's bizarre. It's really flown. It's gone so quickly.
Tell everyone a little bit more about your sort of background and journey, and then a little bit update on sort of the company you're at now, just to give them a bit of context.
Wow, background. Now you're going to make me think about the last couple of decades of my career. I'm not as young as I look, but my career has been quite varied. So at the moment, I'm in, fintech or financial services, albeit with technology. Prior to that, I've worked at various different organizations, from commercial property firms to, do you want me to name them?
Sure. You can name a couple of them.
Yeah, so when we met, I was at TJX Group, which of TK Maxx and HomeSense fame. So I was there for a little bit. Prior to that, I was in the entertainment industry, talent management sector, still HR director, people officer, etc. role. So I was there for a couple of years. Commercial property was a big one. So I worked at Hammerson, and a company we'd never have heard of called GLP, who basically designed warehouses for Amazon. Prior to that, I spent some time at Barclays, which everyone would have probably heard of, global company, KPMG for many years. Prior to that, just the PR sector. And then I started my career back in the 90s at McDonald's, purely by accident. So that was kind of getting involved in a lot of the people-related stuff and, orientation of colleagues. And at that point, my manager at the time said, well, you enjoy all this stuff. Why don't you just do it? Stop, don't worry about the till, don't worry about the chips and the burgers. You do the kind of people stuff. There was a HR database that at that time, if you think about mid-90s, it wasn't a lot of the workforce that had worked with computers. If you can think of a time like that. So because I was in college and I was a student and I was using computers, that's how I stumbled in. Yeah, so, they were like, what's this database? All this, personnel details. Can you do it? And I was like, of course I'll do it. And that's
literally how you fell into this whole career trajectory, right? Completely by accident.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty normal though, to be honest. Like most people I speak to, very rare did they choose a career doing this. Like that. It's a crazy example, but like, all right, you're young, you're good at computers, student. We've got this database of people, people management database. Can you do this? And now look at you now.
Yeah.
how many years later? So you've worked with many large companies. What was it that attracted you to this chief people officer role? In a would you call it a scale up?
I'll call it a scale up, absolutely. So it's a scale up. So LMAX Group in 2021 got private equity backing from JC Flowers, and if you've heard of them, they're a pretty big PE house, and they specialize in financial services.
Okay.
And they're US based. I think they're in New York. So they, believed in the organization. There was a 1 billion valuation, and then they bought a section of the company. They invested rather in a section of the company.
So the company had a $1 billion valuation?
Yep.
Wow.
Dollars, yeah, in dollars. So, and that was because obviously the company was scaling up. But the company's been around for about over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
They've been around and they've kind of built their business, steadily, and then gone to this inflection point where it's time to scale up.
And they need the investment at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then, my door was knocked on. I was like, oh, Aaisha, there's this opportunity. And I was happily at TJX at the time when I was approached about this role. But it was really exciting, I would say, the proposition. Why was I interested in the role? It was a chance to, I think, really make a difference. And as we talk about kind of some of the questions you're going to ask me, I'm very big on legacy and what I can leave behind, how I can make things better. And you tend to find in large organizations, there's a lot of been there, done that. So you can run a part of the business, but you're not really reinventing the wheel. You're not bringing something new to it.
You don't have an opportunity to create something from the ground upwards, right?
Basically. Right. And at heart, I'm a creative, I would just say.
So that's what attracted you then, really, the opportunity to set the foundation, build something fresh.
Basically.
What was in place already when you joined? Did they have anyone?
Oh, they did. Yeah. No, they did. They had a good HR function. It was doing obviously the day-to-day, people got paid, all of that. So I'll definitely say on that, there was a great foundation to kind of land on. But if you're talking about kind of the chief people officer space, the extra, the added stuff that we as HR practitioners need to deliver these days, as in the well-being, the DEI, sure. Even down to compensation benefits, even down to HRIS is completely different to how it would have looked 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was kind of drafted in with, I guess, my experience over those industries that I mentioned at the beginning.
How did one of the things I was interested to talk to you about is because it's very different, right? From working in the scale up, being a HR leader versus a large, some of the companies you mentioned. How do the HR responsibilities differ when transitioning from a large company to a mid-sized scale up? Like, can you share some examples of the specific things that you're doing now that you perhaps weren't doing in a larger organization?
In a larger organization, you can imagine you're quite, I won't use the word, so I'm trying to think of the best word. You've got a specific thing to do. So if I talk about a big company like Barclays, when you're a business partner, you just do that. You're just there influencing and coordinating with the business. Whereas in a scale up, you get to touch many different parts of the HR discipline. So one day I could be designing a bonus scheme. The next day I could be getting involved in CSR activity, because that in this company that also falls under my umbrella. Mm-hmm. Another day I could be advising on an ER case, for example, maybe a quite senior one. And then the next day I'm talking to someone about our Singapore office and that refurb, which is literally my morning. I was talking about the refurb or new Singapore office that we're kind of trying to roll out soon. So there's a lot of variety, I would say. And you need to get your hands a bit dirty, as in...
Yeah, okay.
You need to be more hands-on in a scale-up, and people will come to you directly versus through, if I think of the large organizations, there would be a couple of
multiple layers. Yeah.
Before it gets to me.
You can't hide anymore.
No, can't hide. But you know what, Chris, I love that. I love the interaction with people.
Yeah, it's great, yeah.
That's actually why I do it. It's I think if you're in HR or people management and you don't actually like interacting with people, you might be in the wrong job. No. Because that's the constant every day. Always.
Yeah, even the most successful leaders that I speak to at the big companies, they still make a conscious effort to get out of their office, to meet people face to face, to travel around different business units around the world, walk onto that factory floor so they really understand what's going on, not just hearing through the multiple layers like you're describing as well. So even in companies with 100,000 employees, they still try and make a conscious effort to really understand their people, if that makes sense. Not just through the data, because the data doesn't always tell the story too. So you have to have both.
But it's important to the people as well.
Yes, exactly.
I would say.
You actually care. You actually came here. Yeah.
I think half of the job is letting people feel like they're being heard. So you might have people come and, they might complain or they have an issue with one thing or another. A lot of my job is just listening to people and finding solutions and just making them feel on a human level they've been listened to and their ideas have been considered. I think there's a lot to say for that.
Yeah. What would you say is like the biggest challenges that you faced in terms of adapting to the fast-paced environment of a mid-sized scale-up?
Things can change. Uncertainty, definitely uncertainty. And I recently wrote an article on LinkedIn about that exactly, like leading through uncertain times. When you're in a business like this, that we can try and plan ahead, but ultimately, if the market moves and we have to change tack, we just have to do that. You've got to have kind of those coping skills to be able to kind of not like on a whim exactly as he's thought through, but it takes less time to make a decision here than in a larger organization where you'd have to stakeholder and it'll take months or even years to get things across. Here, things can happen in a few weeks and we execute it.
Mm-hmm. I can completely relate to you as being a small business. Like we can just pivot so quickly.
Yeah. It's agile
before our competition, but at the same time, that's not easy, like you're saying.
No.
There's tough times to get through that.
Yeah. And it can be unsettling as well for people. It can be, and looking at the landscape, as talk about the kind of uncertain market, what's going to happen next, who knows? Last year we had the whole, at least in our industry, we had the whole FTX situation and things like that. And it's okay, how do we ground ourselves and make sure we stay on the ball? We're thinking of our priorities. We're staying on that track. You can easily get distracted,
How has being in a scale up? How has that changed the way you approach attracting talent, the talent management and talent in terms of attracting talent to the business? Yeah,
I think you have to work harder and you have to build up pockets and communities that you partner with to understand and kind of learn about your business. If you're in a large tech, for example, or maybe a Monzo, which is, I guess, bigger fintech to us, if I like to name drop, there will be individuals out there that already want to work for you.
They already know Monzo.
They know. Yeah. So for us at LMAX Group, for example, there are pockets of communities, let's say the developer community, that we're known in that niche, but there'll be others that we're not so known and we have to tell more of a story. So for the talent acquisition team here, there's a lot more. They do a lot more work on this is who we are, this is how we operate, this is our culture, really telling the story. And I would say their skills are a lot more sharper, I guess.
They have to be.
Because of that. They have to be sharper. And then we rely a lot on kind of word of mouth and, our ambassadors. I always say people that leave us, we want them to leave well so they can be an ambassador, because people do leave. Of course they will.
And they return.
And they might. And we have had some returnees as well.
Yeah.
They've gone out and seen,
actually,
I prefer the LMAX culture. Let me come back. Can I come back?
That's always a good thing. I love that. I've got a couple of employees that have left and come back, and I love it. Like, and I don't want to rob them of the opportunity to go out there and see.
Absolutely.
It should always have been a really happy conversation, and really, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it is like, oh man, like I've got to replace this person. Obviously, the stress of it, but at the same time, you got to give everyone, it's their career, their life, right? You should be happy for them and help support them in any way you can. And I found that actually ends up returning back, like you mentioned, through referrals that they make, or they may come back themselves. Yeah. So it makes sense. You got to do a lot more work around storytelling. And the why, the purpose, the mission, etc., because they may not necessarily know the business as well. So
But the other thing we do there, just to mention, is we do a lot around giving opportunities to people that wouldn't ordinarily get that opportunity in, let's say, the bigger organizations. And some organizations you're going to have to have gone to this university, done this kind of degree or whatever. We're quite open-minded. So we work with, in London at least, we work with Kensington and Chelsea Foundation, and they have a program called the Spear Program. And what they do there is they pair us up with kids, or I guess young people that are maybe on the lower socioeconomic spectrum. They might not have as many opportunities, even if they are in college, etc. And then we would just do a kind of like mentoring with them or CV skills. And then out of those people, we've actually managed to hire some individuals.
Nice.
In our like early careers sector. So
what type of roles do they go into?
So a couple of them went into the service desk, IT service desk, some on our kind of market operations, some in customer services, where they can learn and they can be taught the job and the company. And what we like to do is also give people opportunity to move around as well. So in a smaller scale up, it's easier to do that. You're not so rigid in terms of, well, you can, I've never done this before, but I fancy going in that team. Or leaders and managers will come and poach people, the good one. They'll say, we've seen this person, they'll be great for my team. Can we, once they've done like 6 months with you, can they come over and work in this other area? So there's a lot of that just organically that happens.
Well, that's a really good, I'm sure your team talks about that, but that's a very unique differentiator between you and the competition, right? They wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity at the larger organization. They wouldn't. No. And one of the things about working in the startup as well, you get to taste everything as well. Like you're saying, you're close to everything. You get to, if you want to go and work in marketing or sales, operations, there's more opportunities for you to grow and develop your career. And move around as well, which is a big attraction. Yeah, definitely talk more about that, because that's a really exciting part. It's something that I actually, it was one of the things that immediately stood out for me, going from a large company that I was in before, where I was like, you're in sales, you stay in sales. You don't go anywhere else, Chris, which is one of the reasons I left, because I wanted to learn more and experiment. And I actually asked if I can move into different teams, and they were like, no. And I was like, well, I've been doing this for 10 years. I don't really want to keep doing the same thing just because I'm good at it.
Doesn't mean you want to do it. You get bored.
I got bored. Yeah, and that was actually ended up being the reason. Also, it's a great retention tool for you, of course, right?
Absolutely.
Amazing retention tool to be able to constantly keep people engaged and motivated, because they can see themselves growing.
It's definitely one of our values. So we talking a lot about that, is about being dynamic. And that value came out of just what you can see in the business. People are quite dynamic. They move around. They might go and work in another country. Yeah. They put their hand up and, we advertise in the role, and they're like, well, actually, I think I'll be great because, and they put a business case forward and say, actually, you might be great for this role. Maybe that's part of your development. Okay, go off and do this for 2 years.
Yeah.
In New York or whatever. So we're very agile like that.
You sound like you're doing really well, which I'm glad to hear, but
thank you.
It isn't always the case. Like, I speak to many CHROs who go from the large organizations to a scale up or startup, and they really struggle because they don't have all of the resources, the teams, everything we kind of described. And like you mentioned, all of a sudden they're getting their hands dirty. They're in 1 minute they're doing payroll, next minute they're doing comms, like you mentioned, right? And they're like, whoa, like this is overwhelming. So what advice would you give to any of the HR leaders listening that are considering moving to a startup or a scale up?
Or a scale up.
Yeah.
I'd first ask yourself why. Why do you want to move? Is it because you think it's going to be exciting, or is it because you're fed up in your current role? I think understanding why we do things, especially if you're at that leader level, you should be thinking more strategically, not just kind of, oh, well, I fell into it. Not like the beginning of career is different, but as you get a bit further on in your career, you want to be a bit more considered. I would ask them, think about why you want to move and what are your pros and cons? What are your absolute nice to have and what are your must have? So that's how I would advise them to go forward with any organization they're talking to. So if I talk about what I did in this role, for example, before I even considered the role, I had lots of conversations with David Mercer, our CEO, around what is it going to look like? What is he actually wanting? So I can understand if I'm going to match what he's looking for, rather than there's the job description and there's actually, what do you want me to come and do?
Yes, true. Yeah. Two different things. You're right.
There's two different things. That's the question I was asked. What do you actually want me to come and do? And can I? And then in order for me to do that, I've said, well, this is the team I'm going to need. What about the budget? These are the kind of resources I'll require. And it's up to the CEO to say, yes, we can do that, or actually, no,
and this is before you even got in there, right? This is great.
Of course.
Yeah, so
before even signed or got through the door. When we started to get to the point of, actually, Aaisha, I think it'd be great for this role, it was, okay, let's sit down. These are all the things, what do you want and what am I looking for? And it has to kind of marry, doesn't it? It has to match, so that if you go back to the why, there's always the reason. So I always go back to why did I want to come to this organization? And there were a couple of things in my mind. Definitely the opportunity to create, because I've realized I'm a creative at heart. So the opportunity to create, the opportunity to leave a legacy as well, which, like I said, in the larger companies, that's a little bit harder to do, right? Because it's hard to push through innovation and things like that. through all the layers that you may have, right? And there's more stakeholders. So I thought, right, I want to leave a legacy. And also I wanted to make a difference. I wanted the people and culture to make a difference to the people. I wanted to come into the office and for it to feel different because I'm there. So those were like kind of the key, and distance and things like that. There were other practical things, like the last job was quite far away from where I live. So it was harder and harder when we got out of the pandemic and had to actually come into the office and things like that. But yeah, I would say ask yourself why and just kind of match up the role versus what you need as an individual. So does that answer it?
Yeah, no, definitely answered it. I love the point that you made about you got the job description and then you got the job. Because I've been in jobs as well, right? Like where I've got the job description, I go in and like this is what you want from me, right? And then it's too late. Then you're already in. Like
you're in it.
You can't start. The fact that you sat down with the CEO and said, what is the biggest challenges that I can help you solve? That question alone is a big, very important question.
Totally.
And then you really will get an understanding. And then, okay, that's great that you want that, but are you willing to invest in X, Y, and Z, people, technology, etc.? So you have to, those are two very important questions.
Well, I ask those questions because from experience, obviously, I've been in organizations where they want either head of HR, HR director, or chief people officer. They want one of those key titles, but then they just want it to be a title. They don't want you to actually do anything.
I get it. Same with D&I, right? We see that.
What's that?
We see a lot of that within D&I.
Oh, yeah.
They want to say that they have a head of D&I, right? And then, but are you actually putting the resources behind that? Are you, are you actually talking about it during our conversations and meetings, right, with the team, and putting it at the heart of our culture, our why, our mission? If you're not doing that, then it's just like a tick the box exercise. As well.
And ultimately, I think you end up not having a real voice. You're just kind of a figurehead.
Yeah.
And I struggle with, if I think about why I do things or why I'm here, I would struggle with that, and I wouldn't deliver my best. So for me, there's no point if I can't deliver my best.
Yeah, I know something you're really passionate about, and it's reflected in your role is us. The terminology around HR itself. Why do we need to change the terminology from HR to people and culture?
Because it is about people. It's simple. I mean, it's about people. Human resources is obviously a term before that it was personnel, wasn't it? Like back in the day when I started, then you've got human resources, human capital.
Human capital. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, there's human capital. But really, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with people and how they interact in a place where basically we ask them to come in and do something for us and we give them some money for it. That's the most basic. It's an exchange, right? So it's all about the people you have dealing with that kind of exchange. And culture is, I guess, where we do it. So people are the humans or the people, and the culture is where we do it, right?
And how we do it.
And how we do it, exactly. So that's why people and culture is really important, and changing that terminology and helping people to really understand what we're dealing with here, I think is really important. So one of the things that I implemented in this role is changing that HR to people and culture, because it then encompassed quite a lot of things. So under my remit, it's not, and this is happening with other CPOs, by the way, it's not just the traditional HR part. There's also corporate responsibility. There's also the premises where we work kind of thing. It's all to do with people. People care about this a lot. There's obviously inclusion and diversity. Sometimes that also comes under the people banner as well. There's so much that people care more about these days that we need to look after and we need to think about as businesses.
Yeah. Now you've been in the role for over a year. Looking back, is there anything you'd have done differently, given your experience being there?
That's a hard one for me because I'm not one to regret things. I tend to learn, and I'll say, right, I won't do that again.
Or what didn't you do again?
What would I do again? I don't really have anything that I wouldn't do again. I mean, I try to walk with my values. What I might do again is there are some areas maybe I would slow it down before implementing, and so that people really understand what we're trying to build.
Okay.
Because for some individuals, it may have felt like, oh my God, this is all changing. This is a shock. For those who've been around a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess from my lens and from my team's lens, we've got on our mandate, we know what the board and leadership want delivered, right? And then there's obviously consultation with the business and that discussion, which did happen, but there was some pockets they didn't quite realize it would happen so fast.
Yeah.
And I'm someone that I'm quite focused on delivery. Like the goals. I'm very quite goal oriented. So right, we've got this in place, got that in place. So for some people, it might have been a bit fast, like, oh, what's happening? It's all changing.
Yeah.
Whereas in my mind, I'm like, it needs to change.
Yeah, I get it. I think everyone listening can completely relate to that.
Yeah.
We just got to kind of make sure that we sometimes take a step back and be like, okay, are these people on the journey with us? Do they understand the why, like what it means for their role and them? Because I think that's the hard part. Sometimes you see the change happening, you're like, what does that mean for Chris? What does that mean for my role, right? And then it causes that uncertainty and then you get this when you get the pushback. So I think you're never going to have everyone on board. That just doesn't exist. But there are times where we do need to slow down a little bit and be like, okay, we need to make sure that this is communicated very clearly, effectively, and multiple times.
I think that's what it is the multiple times. I think most people, so this business, I mean, for most people in this business, they're pushing us for more. They're pushing people and culture. They're asking. It's great. I mean, for a people and culture or HR person, this is great. It's a great place to be. But then you've got smaller pockets where people that have been around maybe for some time and they've seen the business evolve. For them, it might be, okay, let's take a bit more time and make sure they get what we're trying to do. It's all good, all for the good.
It's never ending as well. So it's not like this ever ends. It's a continued conversation.
Absolutely.
And evolution as things change and develop. So you kind of constantly got to be bringing them on that journey with you.
You're so right.
And as you said, like you got people at different stages of their career. Some people just joining the business. Some people that have been around for ages. It's the way you communicate to different populations also needs to be tailored in certain ways as well. Otherwise, they just say, "Oh, this all of this information doesn't even affect me." This isn't even aimed at Chris as well. So, listen, before I let you go, I'm going to jump into our quick fire round.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you some questions, but you only have 30 seconds per answer. Are you ready?
My gosh!
Are you ready? You're like, no, I'm going to run, Chris.
I didn't know it was quick fire. Okay.
Yeah?
Go on. Go ahead. If I get stumbled, then...
You'll be all right. You'll be fine. What are your hobbies and passions outside the office?
Oh, that's an easy one. So big on interior design. Love it. Love interior design. I even started a course, but then I started this job. So that job I interior design and big... I think we talked about this when we first met. I'm a big lover of music.
Nice.
Singing, that kind of thing. So I'm very musical. I like a lot of that outside work. So
next episode you're going to sing for us. Is that what you're saying? is that what you're saying?
I don't know. Maybe if you twist my arm.
No, we'd have to like make a song about your why and values and like mission, and you sing it. And I'm sure all the employees will then understand the why, and mission of the business. If you could click your fingers and change one thing about HR, what would you change?
Oh, I would change some of the manual processes. I think we need in HR to really think about what's coming, the whole kind of chatbots, AI, chat GPT, etc. We need to really think about what that means and how we can get ahead of that before, I use an analogy of the bank tellers, right? All the banks are closing now because everybody has apps, at least in the UK. So we mustn't rest on our laurels and feel, oh, well, there will always be a HR business partner or there would always be certain roles. Actually, how do we evolve? What's next?
Yeah.
So that's what I would change. We need to move faster to technology.
It also allows you to focus on value add tasks, more valuable and have conversations and automate the rest of that administrative stuff as well. Great. How do you think your family and friends would describe what you do for a living?
Right. Some would call me like the corporate mum. I feel like that sometimes.
That's not bad.
Or police.
Police.
Depending how you think about it.
Yeah.
The one that's always having to have a chat and say, oh, could we have done that differently? What do you think? Kind of coach people through things.
Coach is a good one.
Coach, coach. Because I guess that's a bit like a parent as well. And I would say also a friend.
Nice.
a friend to everybody.
All right, that's quite good actually.
Yeah. A couple of different hats I have to put on.
It's funny, right, when you hear people's perspectives. What legacy do you want to leave behind for your family?
Family, I would say a sense of purpose and a sense of making a difference in the world. So that, I think, is what that's how I try to live my life. Like, what am I doing and why? And I would like to instill that in my children, etc., and all of that.
Amazing. So, have you ever considered quitting HR and doing something else?
Lots of times.
That's a real honest answer right there.
Have I thought of quitting
quitting HR and trying a different,
Of course, yeah. I've thought of quitting to be an interior designer, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, we'll be there. Be there. Well,
I still love what I do at the moment.
So, as you mentioned to me before we hit record, you're kind of renovating the office spaces and everything.
Yeah.
Perfect opportunity for you. Interior design, I bet you're all over it. I bet
you're my element.
You're like,
honestly.
I bet you've got your books and everything. You've got your Pinterest board. All over it. Love it. Love it.
Doing bits at home as well. So I do love it. I do love it.
What would you say is the biggest investment you've made in yourself?
I would say my professional development and education. So I'm the kind of person that if I am in a role or not, there's always either a course or something that I'm going to go and study or a qualification. I'm always looking for like the next thing to not just keep myself up to date, but also to learn. I'm very much kind of someone that loves lifelong learning. So I'm always trying to.
What's an example of something you've done recently, like the last one?
So recently I am doing the CPO program with Cambridge Judge Business School.
I saw that advertised on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I saw that come up. Oh, yeah.
Did it come up? Oh, I didn't. I thought I turned my notifications off.
No, not yours. I mean, I just saw LinkedIn advertise it to me.
Yeah. But it's brilliant. So far, so good. It's highly recommend if you are a HR leader, just give them that free promo. But no, it's really good.
I was skeptical when I saw it. I was like, CPO course at Cambridge. I was like, all right. I was like, I obviously didn't look into it, but it was interesting to see that pop up. So that's it. That's what you're doing now. Amazing.
Yeah, and what that does, it's not, just to be clear, it's not like what you might go and study might not be giving you anything you don't necessarily know, but it helps solidify your knowledge and also help you understand where you need to go with it, and are you on the right track, and is this what other leaders are doing, other businesses, what are their challenges? So
you get to meet people there as well, so you can get
I was going to say the networking was also good on some of the courses that you can do.
Right.
And you can be in a bit of a bubble in your own business, because obviously we have training in-house as well. People can, we've got Udemy, everyone has access to that here, for example. But when you go out and do an external course with another organization, you get that cohort of like-minded peers. And, CPO is a lonely job. There's no one else in the business I can talk to about my job.
That's true. That's why we do what we do. That's literally why we exist. Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
That's
exactly.
Right.
Love that. Who's the one person that's had the biggest impact on your career?
It's a strange one to say, but I would say my father.
Wow.
No, it's not strange. It's strange.
That's not strange.
It's not strange because I think as I grew up, I rebelled against it, I guess, against he was quite an accomplished, he's passed away now, but he's quite an accomplished person in life. He'd had a PhD in chemistry. He had property, like an empire, like he was a business person, right? Quite prominent person. Successful, I would say, and property developer, all of that. So he was quite a high achiever. Okay. So that was always, I guess, for me and maybe my siblings, we always had that kind of quite high benchmark.
A bit of pressure as well, I'm sure.
Yes. And then he expected a lot of us. Like at school, you had to do well, you had to be at the top of the class. And I think when I was younger, I kind of rebelled against that. And I was like, no, I'm not trying to be this kind of overachiever. And then I've come into my career and I'm like, oh, actually,
that helped me.
That helped me, because I've seen what's possible, basically. That's why I said it was a bit of a
good figure for you, a good, inspirational figure. You saw him working every day, the hard work, the dedication that he put, and that rubbed off on you clearly.
A bit of that, I guess. Well, because he was that accomplished, that's why I say it's a strange one. Being a dad, that was a bit neglected, if I'm honest. So, there's that balance. But I guess nowadays we can balance that a lot more
That's one of my worries as well, to be
couldn't.
honest. That's like, I never saw my dad at all growing up. And that was one of my things when I became a dad, that I wanted to make sure that, yes, I'm growing the business. Yes, I want to create generational wealth for my family, but I want to be there. There's no point me doing, I was like, I don't want to do all of that. And then I'm not going to sacrifice being a present dad and husband for anything, any amount of money.
Definitely not.
So I even when we decided to build this studio and where we work, I was like, it has to be close to home. I don't want long commute. So I want to be able to pick up Robin from nursery. I want to be able to spend time with her. Like that was all in consideration, just as important as every other decision in the business as well. So, and I love that. I wouldn't change it forever. Like you could never get me to come work for you now, anyone, because I'm like, I've designed it perfectly to
work for you.
Yeah.
And I'll say that's music to my ears. You know, that's what we have to contend with these days as employers as well. It's not good enough to, you know, for people to just come in and do like, I guess, the 9 to 5 and all of that. We've seen hybrid working emerge, even remote working. We've seen things like that. People are demanding more because they want to spend time with the kids, their family, or they want to go and, you know, they might have a horse and they have to spend time with their horse, for example.
I actually have an employee that has to spend time with her horse.
I had a colleague that had a horse, and that was the flexible working arrangement. Was like, well, I have to exercise the horse.
I have an employee that does exactly that. Yeah. I love the fact that we were never going to do this quick fire round, were we? We just went off. It's my fault. We went off.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm joking. I'm joking. I love it. Last question though. What advice would you give to those CPOs of tomorrow that are going to be sitting in your seat one day?
I would give them, the advice I would give them is, and I actually thought about this, lead with your values, because you're in a very powerful position. You have the power to influence, you have the power to make or break essentially people's lives and careers by how you structure your function and how you deliver. So lead with your values and make sure when you go home at night, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I think I did the right thing. Mm-hmm. If you're not sure, ask your team, talk to people. Don't just go by your own judgment. I do a lot of that. Do a lot of, hey, this is a situation. What do you think? Because in our profession, there's black and white, but there's a whole lot of gray in the middle. You know, there's, okay, what it says in the policy that we need to do. And there's also what's the human thing to do? What's the people thing to do? So that's what I would advise. Lead with your values.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's funny, we spoke like almost 2 years ago.
I know.
And I'm so happy for you and everything that you've achieved. Genuinely, I can see it on your face. Really, anyone watching, no problem. Even if you're hearing, you can hear how passionate that you are about you are living your values, right? Like you said, and your purpose as well. But I want to see some of the interior design stuff as well, though. I want to see some
in another life.
Listen, you post it on LinkedIn. You know, you got to share that other side with people.
I'll share my Instagram at some point.
Yeah, do it. No worries.
No,
not everyone else. No worries. Well, listen, I wish you all the best until next week, and congratulations and everything. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.